Hello, Live Love Readers. Today we are going to be reading Amy and the Missing Puppy, The Critter Club, Chapter 5, The First Clue. By Tuesday morning, the storm had passed. The sun was warm as Amy walked next door. She'd helped out at the clinic for the morning. Then she'd call Ellie. She missed her friends so much. How many times have I walked down this sidewalk? Amy wondered. 1,000,000 times? That's how she knew there were 15 sidewalk squares between the two houses. She counted them in her head as she walked. But this morning, on square number 9, Amy stopped in her tracks. Right there on the sidewalk were several paw prints. Amy felt like she had seen one exactly like it yesterday. Amy remembered the paw prints on her favorite yellow hoodie. Rufus had been here since the rainstorm. Otherwise, the rain would have washed the prints away. Amy smiled. This was a clue. But now what? What would Nancy Drew do? And then she knew. Amy hurried back into her house. She returned with a small green notebook and her favorite blue pen. She opened the notebook and began to write. It was a start. Amy was on her way to solving the mystery of the missing puppy. Chapter 6. Rufus was here. Amy was in charge at the front desk all morning while her mom and Mrs. Sullivan were out looking for Rufus. Gail, the vet assistant, was busy giving some checkups while Amy watered the flower bed out front and refilled the treat jar. Dr. Purvis finally returned around lunchtime. Any luck? Amy asked her. Her mom shook her head. No. We drove all over. No sign of him. Amy pulled out her notebook. I found one sign of him, she said. She explained how the print on the sidewalk matched the Rufus prints on her hoodie. Amy's mom smiled. Great detective work, she said. The more people looking, the better chance we have of finding Rufus. Amy walked home and had lunch. After she finished her sandwich, she called Ellie's house. Amy, Ellie cried when she came to the phone, am I glad to hear from you. There was really loud squawking in the background. Nana Gloria's parrot is driving me nuts. Amy couldn't make out Lenny the parrot's words, but it sounded like he was singing a song. Well, if you could call all that squawking singing. Amy told Ellie about Rufus going missing. She also told Ellie about the paw print. Do you want to come over? Amy asked. We could look for more clues together. The words were barely out of Amy's mouth. Ellie shouted, I'll be right over, and hung up. Ellie lived only 3 streets over. A few minutes later, she rode up on her bike. Amy went outside to meet her. Oh, Amy, Ellie said, giving her a hug. She was out of breath. I love Lenny, but that bird does not stop talking or singing. Amy held back a giggle. She knew Ellie didn't think it was funny. Amy told Ellie all about the case, how Rufus got loose when he went missing and what he looked like. She showed Ellie the paw prints on the sidewalk. Together they looked around for more. Here, Ellie said, pointing at the sidewalk. They were past the clinic. A trail of paw prints led further down the sidewalk. Yes, Rufus prints for sure, Amy cried. She pulled out her notebook and jotted down these clues. The girls slowly followed the trail. I don't blame Rufus for running away from mean old Mrs. Sullivan, said Ellie. I would run away too. They were in front of the house on the other side of the clinic. The paw prints were disappearing. I don't know, Amy replied. She thought about how sad Mrs. Sullivan was about losing Rufus. It was clear she really loved him. Maybe Mrs. Sullivan isn't as bad as everyone thinks. You know what they say about judging a book by its cover. Ellie stopped walking. She looked at Amy. She rolled her eyes. You would talk about books at a time like this, Amy. The girls looked down. Suddenly, There were no more paw prints. They were at a dead end. Now what? Ellie said. Amy looked down at her notebook. She turned to a blank page. If we were Rufus, where would we go? Asked Amy. They thought about it as they walked back to Amy's house. They decided they would spend the rest of the afternoon making a new list. At 4:30, Ellie eyed the clock and jumped up. I've got to go, she said. Nana Gloria is making dinner, and I promised her I'd help. The girls made plans to meet up the next day. I'll be at the clinic all morning, Amy said, but after lunch, we should check these places. Ellie nodded. That sounds much better than hanging out with crazy Lenny all day. Chapter 7. Follow that puppy. The next day, Amy rode her bike to Ellie's house. Together, she and Ellie pedaled toward the park. It was the first place on their list. Can you believe today is Wednesday? Ellie called to Amy. Spring break is already halfway over. Ellie was right. Wow, thought Amy. She had imagined spending the entire week reading a mystery. Time sure does fly when you're solving one. On their way to the park, Amy and Ellie passed Liz's house. Amy was shocked to see Liz's family van in the driveway. Look, Amy called. Liz is back early. As the girls parked their bikes, Liz came out of the house. Yay, Liz, Ellie cried. The three girls hugged. You're back early, Amy said. Liz nodded. We had to cut our beach trip short thanks to Stuart's sunburn. So long, sun and sand, and all because he forgot to put on sunscreen. Stuart was coming around the side of the house. I heard that, he said. Stuart's face, arms, and legs were bright red like a tomato. Hi, Stuart, Ellie shouted cheerfully. She gave him a funny little wave. Stuart was too grumpy to notice. This day gets worse and worse, he said. 3 hours in the car, sitting on sunburned legs, and now I get pawed by some stray puppy. Man, that really hurt. Stuart turned. There, on his shorts, were 2 muddy paw prints. Amy and Ellie stared. Rufus prints! They crowded around Stuart. What puppy? Amy asked. Where? Ellie cried. Which way did he go? Stuart looked confused. A St. Bernard, I think. He said. He pointed toward the backyard. He ran that way. Amy and Ellie dashed around the side of Liz's house. Liz followed. Wait up, she shouted. What's going on? Amy didn't have time to explain. She and Ellie got to the backyard just in time to spot Rufus. Right before he disappeared under the fence, Amy and Rufus dashed over. Rufus! They shouted. The girls peeked through the fence to watch Rufus run through the neighbor's yard. In seconds, he was gone. Liz caught up. She looked over the fence, too. Who was that? She asked. Come on, said Amy. We'll fill you in. The 3 girls hurried to the clinic. Amy wanted to tell her mom they'd seen Rufus. On the way, Amy and Ellie told Liz about Mrs. Sullivan missing puppy. Hi, girls, said Dr. Purvis when she saw them. She was out back by the supply shed. Hey, Amy, have you seen that new case of fitter critter treats? Amy remembered it had been delivered the other day. I put it here by the shed door. Huh? Amy's mom said, looking around. Maybe Gail moved it. She looked at Amy. So what's up? The girls told her about seeing Rufus in Liz's backyard. Dr. Purvis was excited. That means Rufus is still in the area, and he's okay, she said. That's great news. Dr. Purvis suggested they put up missing puppy flyers around town. I believe one of you loves to draw. Ellie and Amy looked at Liz. She grinned. The girls worked together. Amy described what Rufus looked like while Liz did the drawing. Amy decided that the flyer should say. What the flyer should say. Ellie picked an eye-catching shade of hot pink paper for the flyer. They finished just as Dr. Purvis was locking up the clinic for the day. Are you guys busy tomorrow? Amy asked her friends. She would need help putting up the flyers. Ellie and Liz smiled. "We are now," Liz said. "And we will be back for chapter 8. That was kind of a long one, you guys. I think I'm going to have to cut it to only 2 chapters because... Okay, so we will be back for more chapters of this wonderful book. Toodles.